curious, observant. In the mature public housing estates of Singapore, community life revolves around high-density communal hubs. Elderly residents often spend hours at a time reading, talking, or checking lottery results inside dimly lit, heavily air-conditioned commercial spaces. In early 2026, health authorities detected a localized disruption to that daily routine. They identified 13 genetically linked, active cases of tuberculosis clustered around 3 specific communal nodes in Bedok Central, including a popular food center and a bedding shop. To intercept the transmission chain, the Communicable Diseases Agency launched a massive logistical response. Over the course of a single week, they initiated mandatory and voluntary on-site blood screenings for over 3,000 commercial tenants, hawker stall holders, and regular patrons. Deploying a large-scale preventative medical apparatus into the heart of a residential neighborhood is highly visible. Without immediate context, the sudden presence of testing tents and medical crews primed the local population to expect a biological crisis. That expectation gained momentum when the screening results were published. Out of the thousands tested, 473 individuals returned positive blood tests for tuberculosis markers. This figure triggered immediate digital backlash. On platforms like Reddit, citizens aggressively called out poor respiratory hygiene across the city, blaming commuters who coughed without masks in enclosed spaces like MRT trains for the localized spike. The tension surfaced locally when digital rumors alleged a member of parliament instructed frontline medical staff in Bedok to remove their protective masks. According to the Backlash, this was done to maintain a sense of calm, prompting intense debates over prioritizing political perception over the safety of healthcare workers. Compounding this domestic anxiety was a concurrent outbreak of 37 active TB cases in the neighboring Malaysian state of Johor. Given the massive daily traffic flowing across the terrestrial borders between the two regions, the public feared an active cross-border spillover. The combination of raw data releases, questionable crisis management, and regional fear generated a wave of societal paranoia that was detached from the actual biological risk present in Bedok. To understand the actual risk, we have to look directly at the pathogen. Mycobacterium tuberculosis is an ancient, incredibly slow-moving bacteria that requires days or even weeks of close indoor exposure to successfully jump from one host to another. When inhaled by a healthy person, the human immune system acts as a physical prison. Specialized cells surround the bacteria and wall it off entirely, forming a tight, spherical mass known as a granuloma. To survive this cellular containment, the bacteria enter a state of deep metabolic dormancy. This is a latent tuberculosis infection. A person carrying this dormant bacteria is asymptomatic and completely non-contagious. The digital anxiety stemmed from a specific diagnostic detail. The blood tests used by the clinics only detect immune markers of historical exposure. The 473 individuals flagged in the data were exclusively carrying this silent, dormant infection, meaning they posed zero threat to the community. This X-ray illustrates the destructive reality of active tuberculosis disease. This state occurs only if an aging or compromised immune system fails to maintain the granuloma, allowing the bacteria to escape and destroy lung tissue, creating these cloudy upper lobe cavitations. The 14.9. These citizens are harboring dormant bacteria they contracted in their youth, during the mid-20th century, when the national incidence of circulating TB was exponentially higher than it is today. Public health officials mapped the exact origin of the 13 active cases by using advanced whole genome sequencing, effectively reading the DNA of the bacteria to track its family tree. The timeline derived from that genomic data reveals the true speed of the Bedok cluster. These 13 infections accumulated over a sprawling 38-month window, starting in early 2023. The genetic data also severed any connection to the Malaysian crisis. The sharp increase of infections in Johor Bahru in early 2026 belonged to an entirely separate DNA lineage, confirming there was no biological link across the border. This data also addressed assumptions regarding migrant worker populations. While foreign workers face higher TB risks globally, the spatial and demographic data of this specific cluster matched local elderly retirees in a mature heartland estate. The 2026 incident is a retroactive artifact of sequencing technology, synthesizing disparate clinical records into a single domestic transmission chain. Managing a pathogen that requires prolonged, continuous indoor exposure forces a reevaluation of our physical spaces. The fact that genomic sequencing pointed to air-conditioned bedding centers and deeply recessed hawker hubs exposes a systemic blind spot in urban planning. These environments combine extreme physical dwell times with poor air circulation, creating ideal conditions for airborne transmission. Relying on reactionary medical screening after a cluster forms is only a partial solution. We must optimize the architecture containing these susceptible populations by mandating higher air exchange rates and installing upper room UVC purification systems in high-density communal nodes. Strengthening our biological resilience requires proactive physical engineering alongside pharmaceutical treatment. Effective management requires health agencies to aggressively and preemptively communicate the clinical difference between latent exposure and active disease before releasing raw testing numbers. Elevating public epidemiological literacy is the only viable method to neutralize digital paranoia. It prevents routine historical data from being used to spark panic, and it reduces the social stigma that causes infected individuals to delay seeking treatment. Managing an endemic disease within a hyper-connected metropolis demands a population that understands the microscopic truth. When the public grasps the biology, sensational headlines lose their power.